The officer was justified in doing what is required or authorized to do in using as much force as necessary for that purpose. Now, I got this stupid little podcast thing, and I think it's important that people hear truth. Because you're not hearing it. Mark Miller's not talking. He hasn't said a word about this. He talked about it for a year. You want to know what he said a day after the shooting? Clinton Jaws. I want to talk about something. I don't really want to talk about something. I don't really want to talk about this, but I feel like I have to talk about it. I have to talk about it because leaders in Canada mentioned it a year ago. They called it racism. Oh, God, racism. Do you know that there have been so many meetings about systemic racism in the past year? It's insane. The focus of everybody is systemic racism in policing, racist cops. And I want to try to explain something to you. In Canada, they were focused on a few cases. Trudeau came out and said these racist acts need to stop. Mark Miller came out and said he's tired of seeing this pattern, this racist pattern. And they're really talking about three files. They're talking about a car door and Nunavut. Okay. They're talking about Chief Adam Allan, that was tackled. Justifiably. It was a great tackle by police in Alberta. And they're talking about the Chantel Moore shooting. The government has been consumed with systemic racism and police reform. Do you understand how much work has been do you understand how hard they have worked on this issue? Even though I know, and most police know, that there's no such thing as systemic racism in policing. They have been working hard at this. They are working hard on this because of those three cases I just told you about. All those three cases have been investigated. Did you know that? They've been investigated. But they're not talking about it. They say they want a full accountability. They're provided with the full accountability reports. And they don't say anything afterwards. They shut up. They initially say something. An investigation is done. A thorough investigation is done. A thorough investigation is complete. And they say nothing afterwards. They do all the damage by calling cops racist, and specific cops. The evidence comes out, and they say nothing about it. So those three cases that I'm telling you about, look at this. Systemic racism meetings. And this is not all of them, but we're talking, May they had 2 or 3, April, 1, 2, 3, 4 in April, March, couple in March, February, December 7th. And I find this fascinating. And maybe somebody can help me out with this. They're all locked. I went to go into one today. They locked them. The last one that was open is December 7th. See that? That means it's open. You can watch it. You can watch their little meetings. And I think I critiqued that one on my podcast. And I wanted to do some more, but they're not allowing you to hear what they say now. And I found that odd. My point is they're working their asses off on something that doesn't exist. And my point is, well, you know what? I'll get to my point, my second point. But I have to prove my second point by talking about this. And it's hard for me to talk about this one because Chantel Moore, she was part of Port Alberni community at one point. So it's kind of close to home. And I got to live in this community, and I don't want people taking what I say in a wrong way. It's a tragedy What happened to her? It's sad what happened to her. She was shot and killed by police in New Brunswick a year ago, June 4th, I believe it was, at 2:30 in the morning, in Edmundston. Sad. It's sad for her that she's dead, and it's sad for the cop who had to do the shooting. Now, when the shooting happened, Mark Miller, he's a bigwig in the Canadian government. He's an MP or whatever they call them. Okay? He does a lot of things. He's important. When he talks, people listen to him. Mark Miller wakes up in the morning and he tells the media, he goes, I thought it was a morbid joke. This pattern needs to stop with the police. Racism. He condemned the cop. Helped ruin the cop's life. For what? He doesn't know the case. He just read it. He said, I thought it was a morbid joke what I was reading today. A lady, a girl, gets killed during a wellness check? Trudeau came out, called it racist. That's why there's meetings about systemic racism. They investigated thoroughly what happened with Chantel Moore. You hear any details about it? What did Mark Miller say about it? He hasn't said anything. I waited and waited and waited. He hasn't said a word about it. Don't you find that odd? He was quick to jump and destroy a police officer's life and a police force. He's quick to do that. But he won't comment on the facts, which are right here. He probably hasn't even read this report. I read it. And I'm going to share it with you. Just some highlights. Number 1. Racism. The word racism isn't even in this report, Mark Miller. So why'd you call it racist? This report proves the incident had nothing to do with race. Most always knew that. But you want to scare Canada into believing something that's not true. You say it to be elected. You say it to stay in the position that you're in. And when the facts come out, you shut up. You don't say anything about it. That's embarrassing. If I'm ever wrong about something, I'm going to say I'm wrong about something. Why can't you? Mark Miller wanted you to believe that the cop shot Chantel Moore because of the color of her skin. They came out and they said the police officer was 100% justified in doing what he did. That's kind of a big deal, isn't it? You don't hear about it, though. No one's talking about it now. I'm going to tell you the story. What happened with Chantel Moore. Briefly. She's hanging out with a girlfriend, okay? She gets off at Boston Pizza one night. Back June 4th. And she's getting drunk. She goes to her mom's house, gets some alcohol. And her and 2 other friends, they start drinking up a storm. And she gets heavily intoxicated. Around 11:30 at night, while she's still hanging out with one of her girlfriends, she starts texting a bunch of, not a bunch, 2 boyfriends, okay? One that lived somewhere and another one that lived somewhere else. There was one boyfriend that she just broke up with. Anyway, she's going back and forth with these boyfriends. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it turns a little strange, okay? It gets a little bit odd. At one point, she tells one of the boyfriend, nobody wants me. Why not just die alone now? Okay. Then she starts messaging the other boyfriend that she broke up with. This girl loves you. And he responded, you sound drunk, I'm at work. And then all of a sudden, this guy gets a text that says, I'm trying to put her to bed. So it's Chantel Moore pretending to be another guy that's hanging out at her house that has control over her phone. So the messages continue. Who is this? He says. And she writes, it doesn't matter who I am. She's doing this while her friend is with her. Who is this? What does it matter? I want her. I'd like to know who the F I'm talking to. I'm using her phone. What matters is I want her. Because I will force her to want me. She's trying to make the boyfriend jealous. She's trying to freak out the boyfriend. I'm going to repeat one last time, you sick rapist bastard. Who are you? The guy who will get what I want regardless of your questions. Best part is, I've been following her from work for days. He's using my bank card. Then who the F do you want? What the F do you want from me? To make sure there's no one here for her. And then it gets threatening. I will destroy her. She writes, I will destroy her to her ex-boyfriend. Mark Miller wants you to think it was just a wellness check that they went to. A little bit more than that, Mark. At the same time she writes, I will destroy her, she gets a Snapchat from her friend that just left. Her friend says, I lost my wallet. I got to come back and get my wallet. Chantel Moore writes back, okay. And then she writes, I'm staring at her as she sleeps. This bitch will be gone sooner than you know. You can see why Mark Miller doesn't really want to talk about it, right? So the ex-boyfriend that is now concerned that she possibly might be getting... He's really worried about her, okay? There might be a sicko that has actually stalked her and is in her residence now. So obviously the police show up for a wellness check. BS. It's more than that. Police officer shows up. He goes up three flight of stairs, okay? I think it's 3 flight of stairs. She lives on the 3rd story. It's an apartment building. It's got a small sun deck. Front door, small sun deck right here, okay? He walks to the front door. He knocks on the door. She doesn't answer. He looks in the window. She's sleeping on the couch. So he's knocking on. He's got a flashlight. He's knocking on the window to get her attention. This takes a bit. He sees that she awakes. She gets up. She walks into the kitchen, looks at the cop through the window, and according to the cop, she's not happy about something. She grabs a steak knife, opens up the door. The cop retreats backwards as she's opening up the door. He yells at her, demands her to drop the knife twice. Witnesses heard it. That's a fact. She keeps on coming at him with the knife raised. He shoots her 4 times. His back is up against the balcony. She's 5 feet, 6 feet away. And she dies. Sad. It is sad. You know, the news talked about this for over a year. Politicians talked about this for over a year. And nobody's talking about this. You can't get what I just said on the news. It's not interesting enough, right? It shows justification for a police officer. And we don't want to talk about that. So it turns out that Chantel Moore had a history of mental illness, a history of suicide. They interview one of the boyfriends who says, yes, at one point he had to take a knife away. He had to manage a knife away from her because she wanted to hurt herself. And in this report, you can see medical records from September 2nd, 2019. Suicide attempt via stabbing to abdomen. 9 centimeters in width, she stabbed herself. Broken back post jumping out 2nd story window. I don't know what that means. Did she break a back? Did she break a post? I don't know. But she jumped out a 2nd story window. Mark Miller wants to condemn the police. What did you do to help her with her mental illness? What is anybody doing for anybody that suffers from mental illness? Nobody's doing anything. You should be focusing your attention on that shit, Mark. But it's the police fault. It's that officer's fault that she decided to grab a knife that night. That she decided to get very intoxicated and pretend to be somebody else to scare her boyfriend. It's the police's fault. The police clean up Mark Miller's mess. That's what they do. These people need help, so why don't you really help them mentally? But no, it's the cop's fault that she jumped out a second-story window and stabbed herself. I want to read some of this report to you. This was a big investigation, guys. Her death was a result of her being severely impaired by alcohol and combined with her actions, specifically exiting a residence, brandishing a knife, steadily advancing upon officer who was restricted in the movement by the confined space on the third floor balcony and not responding to his clear orders to drop the knife. He had no reasonable options available to him given the circumstances and the physical surroundings that he found himself in, but to use lethal force to subdue a real threat to protect himself from potential severe bodily harm or death. The presence of the real potential lethal threat advancing upon him approximately 6 or 7 feet away, with Officer 1 having no other escape options available on a third-floor balcony above a parking lot, he had no other option but to discharge his firearm at Mrs. Moore, causing her death. He acted in self-defense when he discharged his firearm. No one's talking about it. My conclusion is the situation was an emergency that the officer had to react quickly in order to protect himself, and he did not have any other option but to discharge his firearm. Crown Counsel, they do a little blurb here. The officer in question did believe on reasonable grounds that force or a threat of force was being used against him by Mrs. Moore, that he shot at Mrs. Moore for the purpose of defending or protecting himself, and that his actions were reasonable under the circumstances. The action of the officer was in response to a potential lethal threat approaching him quickly, having no other escape option available on the third-floor balcony as he was confined to, and following repeated orders that Mrs. Moore drop the weapon she was holding. The officer was justified in doing what is required or authorized to do in using as much force as necessary for that purpose. Now, I got this stupid little podcast thing, and I think it's important that people hear truth. Because you're not hearing it. Mark Miller's not talking. He hasn't said a word about this. He talked about it for a year. You want to know what he said a day after the shooting? It drives me crazy that nobody is held accountable for their comments and their statements. They're in an important role, and people believe what they say when they talk.
I don't understand how someone dies during a wellness check.
Wasn't a wellness check. And you don't understand, eh, Mark? Do you understand now, Mark? Do you understand now? Do you get it now? That's how somebody dies. Why would you? Idiot. Knows nothing about policing, but yet comments on it. Doesn't understand how somebody dies at a wellness check. A reporter needs to ask him, do you understand now? No. Right? You're going to say that, right? No, I still don't understand.
When I first saw the report, I thought it was some morbid joke.
Why would he think that? Why would he think it'd be a morbid joke? It's policing. That's policing. It's dangerous. You knock on somebody's door. Sometimes, as a cop, you die. You get killed. Sometimes it's the other way around. How can you not understand this? Not everybody likes police. Not everybody's mentally stable. It's a dangerous world out there. How do you not know that? He knows it. He just wants to stay in his position. He wants to look important. In Canada, I can't believe you allowed him to say these words. I can't believe the media allowed him to say that. And where are you, media? Why aren't you talking about this? Isn't it time you start sticking up for police? Isn't it time you start believing that there isn't? He thinks this is racist, what happened. No evidence of racism whatsoever. Not even a droplet. But he's allowed to say those words. He's allowed to call that act racist. Ruin a cop's life. How do you think that cop feels? Screwed up in the mind for life. Guaranteed. PTSD 100%, no doubt about it. Thinks about it all the time. How many times a day? You don't hear anybody sticking up for him. He was put in that position that he didn't want to do. No, they're the enemy. They're the enemy. And you're going to start believing it because of these people. Trudeau came out and called it racist too. Everybody did.
And you look at it and you say, yes, there'll be an independent investigation. But
yeah, there was.
Frankly, along with many Canadians, Indigenous peoples living in Canada, politicians, I'm pissed, I'm outraged.
He's pissed, he's outraged. You know what? I'm pissed and outraged too. Listen to this guy. Listening to his words. Watching people do nothing about people that suffer from mental health, drugs and addiction and shit like that. I'm pissed and outraged at that. How can you be mad at a police officer in this circumstance?
There needs to be a full accounting of what has gone on.
Right here. A full accounting. Did you read it? Did you comment on it? No. Chicken shit. You say these words and you won't even correct yourself. You won't even come on TV and say you were wrong. Ever. They never say they're wrong.
This is a pattern that keeps repeating itself.
Now, isn't that sick? This is a pattern that keeps on repeating itself. The guy has completely discredited himself. When you keep on saying that things are racist, oh, look at that. Police issue, look at this pattern. Police killed somebody of color. It's racist. I don't even care if there's a full accountability. I'm not going to read it. I'm not interested in it. It's racist. It takes all your credibility away from you. And then when you do actually, if something does happen that's racist, nobody's going to believe you. Racist. Everything's racist. No thinking. No common sense. Nothing in here. Empty. Emptiness. Doesn't even think about his comments. Doesn't even care. Gets away with it. I know I'm rambling.
I watched in disgust yesterday a number of these incidents. A car door is not a proper police tactic. It's a disgraceful, dehumanizing, and violent act.
What? It's not a police tactic? This is how much he knows. This is the guy you're listening to. This is the... Let's talk about the car door. Okay? None of it. Oh my God. Remember I said 3 cases, right? Justified. It's done. That one's done. We've been talking about it for a year. We have systemic racism meetings because of that. Right there. Proved. We proved that it wasn't racism. That it had nothing to do with racism. So let's talk about the car door because that's another one. They investigated that one. Here's the car door. Okay, let's just keep on watching it. Keep on watching it. Drunk man. Blistered out of his mind. Icy. Snowy. The car, just look at the truck. They investigate this. And this is what they find. And believe me, I used to be a cop, and I know these investigations are lengthy and thorough. Trust me. An RCMP did not intentionally strike a man with his truck's door over the course of an arrest last June. That's what they found, guys. No criminal charges. 14 witnesses they interviewed. Investigation has determined that the RCMP officer driving the vehicle did not intentionally strike the community member with the vehicle door, whereas the vehicle came to a sliding stop on a snow and ice-covered track. The driver's front tire went off track. The vehicle dipped forward. An open driver's door swung forward and struck the community member. 100% true, and I believe it. And if you watch the video again, you'll see. that the truck dips down towards him. It's exactly what happened. And that police officer, accident, guys, not racist. Investigation, no racism. So they ask Mark Miller. They follow up with Mark Miller. What do you think of this, Mark Miller? This is what Mark Miller says.
In June in Nunavut, an RCMP officer hit an Indigenous man who was clearly drinking. He could barely stand, hit him with his car. Then after that, 5 RCMP officers tackled the man. The Ottawa Police Service did an investigation to this and determined that what happened there was lawful. At the time when you were asked about it, you said, quote, "A car door is not a proper police tactic. It's..."
Okay, he has a lot to say, right? Because he had a lot to say earlier. He's gonna break this down, what he thinks, right? Right?
It's disgraceful, dehumanizing, and a violent act. So my question to you is, how can an act that you've called dehumanizing not lead to charges in this situation?
Mackenzie, I saw what I saw.
Okay.
You saw what I saw. Okay, that's his answer. You got a problem with that? I do. Well, good for me. It is what it is. Okay, Mackenzie. Great question, Mackenzie, by the way. I would have followed up with, what does that mean, Mark? That's kind of dumb that you're talking. What do you mean you saw? But what does that mean?
To charges in this situation.
Mackenzie, I saw what I saw.
I saw what I saw, okay. Mackenzie, I seen what I seen, okay. I saw what I saw. I saw what I saw, okay. What is that? He has a duty to answer it properly. He has a duty to say, makes sense to me. Which it fully makes 100% sense to me. After they do the investigation and you see the video like that, and that's exactly what happened. They took this cop out of that. None of it, I believe. And I bet you he's pretty damn happy about that. You think that's an easy place to work in? No. You're at depot, you find out you're going there? How many tears have shed at depot when they found out that they're going there? Members are messed up coming out of there. Places like that. You guys don't even know. Rough, hard, tough. You got this dumbass criticizing and ruining the reputation of police with no facts, no evidence. And when the evidence is proven that there's no racism, I saw what I saw. I think what I think. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about facts and investigations, thorough investigations. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about the truth. Chantel Moore, justified, guys. Car door, justified, guys. Chief Adam. Did you watch that video? If you haven't, Googled it and watch it. He got exactly what he deserved. Closed fist. He was combative. When that police officer got out of his police vehicle and seen that, and he tackled him. And when you tackle somebody as a police officer, you tackle them hard. You get them down on the ground. And that's what we've been doing for the past year. They came up with this little tiny committee, and they've been talking about systemic racism in Canada, policing, for an entire year because of those 3 incidences. You're paying for it. Anyways, I rambled. I was all over the place. I don't even know if I made my point, but it's not why I started the YouTube channel. Talk about this. It's not. And I don't want to talk about it anymore. But I can't help it because everybody else is talking about it. We live in a racist country, I guess. filled with racism. Like everybody's racist. Every white guy is racist. Because they won't stop talking about it and lying. And giving their twisted opinions that they probably don't even believe. Anyways, I'm not going to talk. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Bye-bye.